The Crescent Moon Club, in association with Cyclops Entertainment, in conjunction with MP Productions and ABT presents Omnibus Unlimited, a roundtable discussion of provocative issues that must be addressed. Radiovision for the 21st century. Hello again, everyone. I'm Laurence Nobile, host of Omnibus Unlimited. And tonight, kicking off our fifth show, to our producer, John Horrigan, for tonight's tale.
Good evening, Larry. We're going to play a little roulette here on Omnibus Unlimited. I'm going to throw out a story to our panel of, that we can't deem them experts. They're friends and they're joining us tonight. Larry will be introducing them momentarily. But why don't we, in fact, introduce our guest, Larry?
Okay. Why don't we do that? First, an associate producer from ABT, Peter McGowan. Peter, thanks for being here tonight.
It's a pleasure, Larry. Thank you.
Also, a communications and electronics specialist, Kevin Smith. Kevin, thank you for being here tonight.
A privilege.
And a special guest, 4 years in the waiting, my son, Brian Nobile.
How you doing?
Okay, John, time for our tale.
Okay, Larry. And we're doing our first, this is episode 5. We're doing it outdoors tonight from outside of our Mother Brook studios here in Dedham. Well, Larry, you're from Dover, and I thought that we'd throw out this little ditty to our guests here tonight. It's about the Dover Demon. And we're reading from the Encyclopedia of Monsters by Daniel Cohen. At first, young Bill Bartlett thought it was a cat on the wall, but as the headlights of his car illuminated the little figure more completely, he realized that it was not a cat. He didn't know what it was. The creature's most prominent feature was a huge head dominated by large, shiny orange eyes. The body was tiny and frail in comparison, though the fingers and toes seemed extraordinarily long. It appeared to be hairless with a rough peach-colored skin. The total length, head to foot, Bartlett estimated to be about 4 feet. "Did you see that?" Bartlett yelled. The 2 other boys who were in the car with him had been looking out of the other window and saw nothing. They persuaded Bartlett to drive back to the spot where he saw the creature, though he was frightened and did not want to do so. By the time they did get back to the wall, whatever it was had disappeared. This sighting took place in the town of Dover, Massachusetts, about 15 miles southwest of Boston. The date was April 21st, 1977, the time approximately 10:30 p.m. About 2 hours later, 15-year-old John Baxter was walking home when he saw a small figure coming toward him. As he got close to it, the figure ran off into a wooded area. Baxter gave chase, but was not able to catch it. He did get close enough to get a pretty good look at it. The figure he saw had a thin monkey-like body and a large head shaped like a figure 8. When it stopped and turned to stare at him, with its enormous eyes, Baxter became nervous and backed off. Within a few seconds, he found himself running away. Both Bill Bartlett and John Baxter made drawings of what they saw, or said they saw. The drawing looked as if they were of the same creature, though both boys insisted they had not heard of the other's experience until after they made their drawings. The following evening, several other teenagers in the area reported catching a glimpse of the thing. The newspaper got hold of the story and began calling the thing the Dover Demon. But the Dover Demon was a short-lived phenomenon, as are so many monsters. After 2 days, no one else reported seeing the Dover Demon, and interest died away quickly. However, monster buffs continued to speculate over what this thing actually was, and they assumed that it had been anything more than the result of teenage hysteria. That's what it was. The most common explanation was that if it had come from a UFO, not that any UFOs had been seen in the vicinity that night, just because it looked as if it should have come from a UFO. Someone else also mentioned the Manigishi, creatures from the mythology of the Cree Indians of Canada. They are supposed to be little people with big round heads, small skinny bodies, big eyes, and no noses. Their main purpose in life, according to Cree legends, was to play jokes on the big people. So there we have the first story, told in broken English, by Daniel Cohen, the Encyclopedia of Monsters, and we also have another guest joining us.
Well, that's right, John. Just arriving now, independent researcher from Berlin, Massachusetts, Dan Murray. Dan, thanks for stopping in tonight.
Hi, Larry. How are you tonight?
Very well, thank you. Now, gentlemen, who would like to be the first to digress about the Dover Demon or whatever else is on your mind? John?
Well, obviously, I have another ditty I'm going to go over later on the second night of this sighting. But this is a guy by Bill Bartlett. They're 2 15-year-old guys. Maybe we can go to Brian as far as credibility. Brian's 17. They saw something. You know, we know that kids like to party. This is late at night, 1:30 in the morning. They see this little small creature They get a good look at it, and they're both scared.
Okay, and I think that this brings about what usually is the case in terms of evidence. Evidence is usually, if it's photographs, it's out of focus. If it was an eyewitness, it was at night. It was black as pitch. It was raining cats and dogs, as it were. What about this, Kevin? I mean, what about monsters and aliens and the like? How come we can't come up with hard evidence?
Well, I think in this particular instance, we have a scenario of probably not the most credible of individuals, being a youngster and prone to pulling pranks. And as John cited, late at night, and who knows what took place before in that evening. But if the two descriptions, the two sightings, were separate and yet similar in their sightings, it does lend itself to a little bit of credibility. How accurate the descriptions are, one can't tell from such limited information, but it definitely is worth discussing. I think that it's intriguing, the association John made to the Canadian Indians, the Cretans, I believe he called them. Crete. Thank you. Most of the legend and lore is usually based on a little bit of truth and a little bit of fact. It takes an intelligent person to search through all of the myth and mythology in order to come up with the real essence, the real truth. John?
John?
And to go right back to Kevin, though, it's interesting that you say that, because according to this, to the Cree Indians, it's called the Manigishi, and the main purpose in life, according to Cree legends, was to play jokes on the big people. So,
Kevin?
So maybe we have been had.
Quite possibly. Peter, you wanted to say something.
Well, I was just going to get into the Indian ghost aspect of it as well. We never know what land was Dover before the English settlers settled there, as it were. The Indians did have a good piece of Massachusetts owned by the tribes and so forth, but they were a very spiritual people, and about spirits, that they don't die. That people say that when you die, your body goes to rest, but your spirit still lives, and this could just be a case of just playing around, the ghost playing around with the big people.
Very interesting. Now, Brian, is this some sort of prank that someone your age might pull?
Well, the possibility is always there, but it really depends on who the person is reporting the phenomenon, the event, and it really depends on whether or not that person has done it before or in the past, whatever. But I really don't think that the credibility of a kid is really any less than that of an adult. I don't think so.
Well put. Dan Murray, taking a swig of his Coke there. Dan, do you have anything to input on this?
Well, I haven't read the story yet. I'm just looking real quick, but Cree Indians were pretty big up in Canada area, and I happen to know some. Their legends go far, far back, long before anything that we have, and they swear by them. They really do, and whether this guy saw anything or what, I don't think it was a prank. I think he saw something. But it's hard when you're driving down the road to get a really quick description of what you see.
Interesting. John, you have something.
yeah, and just elaborating on what Dan said, there were two separate sightings, okay? There was Bill Bartlett, who was in the car with two of his friends, and they saw something that was monkey-like. They thought it was a cat at first. It had rough peach-colored skin, and he said it was about 4 feet tall. And he yelled, "Did you see that?" And then 2 hours later, John Baxter's walking home, and he sees a small figure coming toward him. As he got close, it ran off into the woods, but he got a pretty good look at it, and he said that it had a large head shaped like a figure eight. So they both make drawings down at the police station, and the drawings looked as if they were of the same creature, though the boys insisted that they had not heard of the other's experience until after they made their drawings. Okay, then the following night, and I'll get into that in a little while, other teenagers see the thing, and they dub it the Dover Demon. So you have two separate accounts here. It sounds like the second sighting, and we'll go to Kevin, sounds more foggy than the first one. But
John's story, they tried to predisposition the sighting as something that should have come from a UFO. Maybe we're looking at this from the wrong aspect. Maybe this is not something extraterrestrial, but very terrestrial. Maybe it's not something spiritual, but something very physical. We could be looking at a creature that has existed in this area for a long period of time. The odd looks may be associated to its specific niche in the chain. It could be a natural adaptation to some function within the world. And just the fact that it's a nocturnal animal, maybe living in a secluded, recluse environment, maybe just specifically Dover, hence the term Dover Demon. We could be looking at a species, the last of its race, or the last few, some endangered species that just has not been documented as of yet.
Yes, go ahead, John.
And what Kevin said, elaborating on that, he's hit us with two different angles completely. Well, three actually. Dover is a very wooded area, secluded area, and who knows what's living there? Could be there for a long time. Number two, what he said is, and they said both witnesses said it looked like it should have come from a UFO, and maybe with that we can go to our expert on UFOs, Dan Murray.
Yes, Dan, anything to add to that?
The description I read briefly fits in with other descriptions of aliens and sightings. The color of the eyes is not important because the headlights would change that. But the size of the body and the long toes and fingers fit right in. Also the height, 4 feet, is what's believed estimated for these creatures. It fits right in with every UFO sighting I've ever heard of that's been legitimized.
Well, if we're talking about a UFO, Peter, you wanted to say something.
Well, I just wanted to add that, it could be a very old creature, from way, way back, but then again, it could be new. It could be a new creature, a new creature that just started to exist in that area. There are so many different possibilities in this subject that, it's endless. That's why we have it on Omnibus Unlimited. On Larry's Omnibus Unlimited.
Brian, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, they're saying this could be like, from a UFO or something like that. Maybe it's a species from another planet, and it could have escaped whatever aliens could have brought it down. The possibility's always there, and it could be like the only species from another world on our planet. And that could be a possibility.
But earlier you had said something which interested me, and Dan, if we are talking about aliens, then we're talking about something completely different. However, something that Brian said in conjunction with something that Kevin said, we're talking about the possibility of something that could be, and I like the way you coined the phrase, very terrestrial. And so what are we talking about here, guys? We're talking about something that continues to perpetuate itself, and for years has been unavailable to be seen or to be captured, and obviously they're very expert at keeping out of sight, or we're talking about something which is the last of its kind. Could it be both or either, or what about
many? First of many, exactly.
Could it possibly something that has a large or long dormant cycle? Something that, comes out, lives, breeds, and then goes into a very long dormant cycle that only reappears every, 100 years, 20 years, 40 years, whatever. That's a very interesting point that you bring out, Larry.
And that runs right into what Peter said, is that it could be something quite new. I mean, is that possible with so many humans on this planet, that something of such primitive structure could actually come of age on this planet?
Well, it's amazing, the realm of possibilities in this subject matter, because there is no scientific proof to any of these sightings, as it were. But to get to your question, it's more or less a fact that everyone's intrigued and very much in interest of this subject matter. That's why ABT brings it to you on Omnibus Unlimited.
Yes, radiovision for the 21st century. Brian, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, it could be a mutation. Could be like, with all acid rain and, the ozone falling and toxic waste and all that stuff, it's also the possibility it could be a mutation in the genes of animals, and this could be, an isolated incident, you know what I mean? Possibility.
Fascinating. John?
Yeah, what he says the key there is isolated incident. It was never seen again in Dover. And what Dan touched on earlier is that there were a lot of, it sounds like your common UFO sighting. But we're going to go into our second story, and we'll throw this one around, okay? It's called the Dover Demon. It says, for more than 25 hours in April 1977, a strange creature from another world made its presence known in the wealthy Boston suburb of Dover. The Dover Demon first appeared at 10:30 on the evening of April 21st, when three 17-year-olds were driving north on Farm Street. The driver, Bill Bartlett, thought he saw something creeping along a low wall of loose stones to his left. Then his headlights illuminated something he had never, ever imagined, even in his wildest dreams. The creature slowly turned its head and stared into the light, revealing two large, lidless eyes shining like two orange marbles and an otherwise featureless face with no apparent nose. It had a head shaped like an upright watermelon and nearly the size of the rest of its body, which was thin and spindly. The hairless skin had the apparent consistency of wet sandpaper. About 4 feet tall, it had been making its way uncertainly along the wall, wrapping its long fingers around the rocks as it moved. The sight struck Bartlett speechless, and a few seconds later, he found his voice, his headlights had passed the creature. His two companions, their attentions elsewhere, had not seen it at all. Not long afterward, 15-year-old John Baxter was walking home up Miller's High Road after dropping his girlfriend off at midnight. A mile later, he saw a short figure approaching and assumed it was a friend who lived on the street. Baxter called out to him but got no response. The two continued to approach each other until the short figure stopped. Baxter stopped too and asked, "Who is that?" The sky was overcast and he could see only a shadowy form. When he took one step forward, the form shot off to the left, ran down a shallow gully, and dashed up the opposite bank. Perplexed, Baxter followed the stranger until he got to the gully. He looked across and 30 feet away saw something with a monkey-shaped body, a figure 8-shaped watermelon-like head, and glowing eyes. Its long fingers were entwined around a tree. Baxter felt suddenly uneasy and left the scene immediately. The next person to see the Dover Demon was Bill Bartlett's friend Will Tainter, age 18. Tainter knew about the creature from Bartlett. Still, he was shocked when he and his friend Abby Brabham, 15, saw the thing along Springdale Avenue. Their description matched Bartlett's, except that where he described glowing orange eyes, they swore the eyes were green. When investigators interviewed the witnesses, they were impressed with the consistency of their testimony. They were also impressed when the police chief, the high school principal, school teachers, and the youth's parents all said the young people were honest and reliable. As one of the investigators, Walter Webb, observed at the conclusion of his probe into the case, none of the four was on drugs or drinking at the time of his or her sighting, so as far as we were able to determine. None of the principals in this affair made any attempt to go to the newspapers or police to publicize their claims. Instead, the sightings gradually leaked out. As for the idea the witnesses were victims of somebody else's stunt, this seems most unlikely, chiefly due to the virtual impossibility of creating an animated, lifelike demon of the sort described. What was the Dover Demon? Some have suggested it was an extraterrestrial. Others say it may be something known to the Cree Indians of eastern Canada as the Manigishi. Little people with round heads, no noses, long spidery legs, and 6-fingered hands. The Manigishi legend goes, lives between rocks in the rapids of streams and rivers. And that, once again, in broken English, is from Charles Berlitz's World of Strange Phenomena.
Very good, John. Now we're joined by Jeff Shamon, independent researcher, and Jeff will be getting to you shortly. Thanks for being here tonight, though.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, does anybody... yes, Kevin.
With John's most recent reading of the description of what happened, a thought comes to mind. What if we're not looking at something from the past or something extraterrestrial, but more along something of the inbred or genetically researched design? What if this is someone's mutated experiment into trying to inbreed animals or breed animals with other species, and it escaped, and it took up a habitat in this area with a limited exposure? You know, maybe it was a one-of-a-kind scenario. Maybe it had a very short lifespan. It's certainly a possibility.
Well, that would go along with what you said, Brian, about genetic defects. Okay, and but Peter, you have something to say?
Well, you can ask all the hypothetical questions you want to. That's what this is right now. These are just sightings and you know, just myths, as it were, right now, because we have no scientific evidence. My question is, what do they live on? What do they eat? What do they, you know, use for protein and so forth? I mean, it doesn't have a nose. It doesn't have a sense of smell. What kind of food does it eat? It doesn't have the sense of smell, so that's one out of the question. That cannot be used, obviously, to do its hunting for them.
Mm-hmm. Good question. Now, Dan Murray, you're asserting that this creature, obviously it's a creature, is consistent with sightings of extraterrestrials.
Yes, the reason why I don't believe it's Terran in nature is because, number one, Dover, as you know, New England, gets cold in the winter. And even if, as someone else said, this thing went dormant, they have no way to keep warm in the winter. There's no fur on it, and it's just not built for survival in this type of environment. And that's obvious from the descriptions that I've read, that a creature of this sort could not survive in this environment here.
Very interesting. Now we're going to our independent researcher, Jeff Shamon. Jeff, you have some insights into this discussion?
Well, you know, I've talked to a lot of different people, and especially those that are involved in these supposed sightings. And I'm taking a different track tonight here. One I've been taking for a while is, and I've done extensive research with this, and also with a professor of biotech at Rutgers University, and we're firmly convinced, okay, that a lot of these people that are saying they saw this, saw UFOs, sightings, Martians, or whatever, okay, either they've had incidents of drugs in the past, heavy drinking, okay, and they've either switched over to excessive amounts of caffeine, nicotine, and especially different drugs like marijuana, and it does have a definite effect on their visionary accuracy. So there's no question in my mind, and I've talked to a lot of different people, and I've talked to many of these people too, and I've seen a strong correlation. So I don't believe a lot of these what I'm hearing.
Yes, Dan, you wanted to say something.
Well, my first sighting was at the age of 5. A good friend of mine's first sighting was at the age of 5. I don't remember being stressed out on caffeine, drugs, or alcohol at the time. Being in the Air Force, Ronald Reagan, I don't remember him being in drug abuse classes when he saw his. Spoke about it at the UN when it came up with the Star Wars plan. Most Air Force pilots I dealt with and talked to, commercial pilots, stewardesses, and policemen. I was out in Michigan, in 50 miles north of Grand Rapids, in a town called Big Rapids, and there was a huge sighting up there. My brother with the State Department, when he was back in the Marines, 1965, 66, when 3 UFOs were above Washington, D.C., and the Army and Air Force sent everything up after him. It's on film. Couldn't catch him. There's been quite a few sober, sane people who have seen these things, and when you see one, you don't go around doubting other people anymore. You really have a changed opinion on everything in life. You also appreciate the fact that you're alive, because you're kind of in awe, and you realize that somebody out there is a lot smarter than anyone you'll ever meet in your life. And that's scary.
Very interesting. Kevin.
Well, if the consensus is that this is a sighting of some extraterrestrial being, the first question that comes to my mind is why? Why Dover? Why that hour of night? Why such a limited appearance? Why?
Very interesting. Peter.
Well, you can ask why till you're blue in the face. You can ask why to just about anything. Why did he just cross the street? There's a reason. Why ask why? My point is something to the effect of, with evidence, as it were, Stonehenge. You know, that, how could that have ever been built by the people back way back when it was built? And it's still standing today. I mean, these creatures, this population, whatever it is, has some sort of strength and some sort of power greater than our own, and we should try to learn how to tap into it.
John. Larry, it's amazing. We were talking about the Dover demon, almost getting some answers, and now we're light years away from it.
Well, that is the nature of this show. Radiovision for the 21st century. So, what are we talking about here, guys? We're talking about... Oh, yes, Jeff Shamon.
This man over here, what's his name again?
That's Dan Murray, independent researcher from Berlin, Massachusetts.
I also want to say, Dan, I threw that out. I know it would kind of rattle you a little bit, okay? But that's one of the things we came up with. Another thing is, unlike the animals in the animal kingdom, man has tremendous imaginations. They just love to let their imagination take control of them, whether it's through the fog or a mirage or things like that, you know. That can explain a lot of it, too, okay? And between that and some of the other things we've come up with, I don't believe they're out there. And many of my colleagues don't either.
John, let me ask Jeff Shamon, do you believe in God?
I don't think that's relevant to the situation here.
John, I mean, Jeff, if you want to answer the question, do you believe in God, then do you believe that God made us, or did we make God?
That's a very good question. And I may determine that that's irrelevant too. Always trying to bring religion into the situation.
No, that could be another aspect, Larry. There are so many aspects to this situation, this subject, this awesome subject matter that we speak of. There are so many different angles, so many different avenues to go down and to answer, and they all left open-ended.
Well, so something you said earlier, Jeff, is something that I said at the beginning of the show before you arrived, and that is all of this tangible evidence that we have is either seen in the pitch of night, you know, it's raining, the photograph is blurred, the videotape is out of sequence, so that would move right in with your theory that it's all a bunch of bull.
Another thing, that's a good point too. What I would say also is, if these people supposedly are able to come down to us down here and they have superior intelligence, why would they be bothering with us? We're like primitive compared to them.
Very interesting, John.
The only thing they know about us, if they were to just base it on pure observations, is the fact that all we have done and tried to do is try to shoot them down and chase them. That's all that the aliens know.
Brian?
Maybe they're studying our culture to better understand their culture, and maybe they have evolved the same way we have evolved, and they come down to study us and see how we evolve, and you know, or maybe they're from the future. Maybe they're us. Maybe they're the human, you know, the human species from the future coming back to, you know, to study us and to you know, to look into how we grow and our biological. Yeah.
So you're saying that one explanation may be that by looking at us, the aliens are looking at their past?
Yeah, that's a very good possibility if, you know, if the aliens do exist, you know, and I think there is a really good chance because, you know, they say at least a lot of people out there have seen aliens and have you know, described them all, and it's pretty much the same.
Peter?
Well, if, that's another, there it is again, the word if. If is the little middle word in life, you know. The situation is such that if they are looking at us to learn, I mean, it's not a very good example we're setting with all the war and tragedy going around the world. I mean, you know, they're either learning from us, learning what not to do, or learning from us to come down at a later time and teach us the right things to do and the right way to do it.
Only time will tell. Well, that's the end of our program, and what a fascinating program it has been. I'd like to thank independent researcher Jeff Shamon for showing up tonight. Thank you, Jeff.
I was happy to be here, Laurence.
And associate producer of ABT, Peter McGowan. Thanks for being here, Peter.
Great to be here, Larry. ABT.
Kevin Smith, electronics and communications specialist. Kevin, thank you for being here tonight.
I enjoyed the discussion. Thank you for inviting me.
And Dan Murray, independent researcher from Berlin, Massachusetts, thank you for being here tonight.
Anytime, Larry.
And my son, Brian Nobile. Your absence.
Very interesting indeed.
And, of course, our producer, John Horrigan. John, thanks for chiming in when necessary.
Thank you so much, Larry.
This is Laurence Nobile, host of Omnibus Unlimited, saying thank you for your attention, good night, and good luck. Omnibus Unlimited is a production of the Crescent Moon Club.